Hey everybody, we're doing an episode today that deals with race. And some people may not be up for a conversation about that, and we respect it, and this may not be the one for you. For those of you who are interested, stay tuned. We're getting right to it. Hello and welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. I'm Dan Oliverio. I'm an author, public speaker, and chubby chaser. And today I am officially half vaccinated. Yay! You know, Trevor and I were talking this morning, and we just calculated that here at the Big Fat Gay Podcast, we are officially 37.5% vaccinated.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah. That's a pretty solid number. And somebody was telling me that I could be able to, like, that his friends were basically just showing up at sites and they're like, yep, we have extras. Just get it. Yeah. Just get your shot.
It's
like,
so weird.
You're just going to a CVS at the end of the day.
Anyway, I derailed us. Who else is on the call?
Oh, right. Me. I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chub. I'm next in line. And tomorrow I'm going to be fully vaccinated. I guess, because this comes out on Wednesday, so never mind. Hold on. And I am a fully vaccinated boy.
By the time this comes out,
I still have to wait a couple weeks for full protection. But yeah, it's a good feeling.
Yay. My name is Michael. I am a chaser, and I haven't been vaccinated, but I'm so excited for today. I'm excited for this podcast. I'm excited to what we're about to get to. I like you guys. You have no idea what's in store. It's going to be great.
Oh, my goodness. My name is Don. I'm a big chubby guy living here in sunny Hollywood. And I am... all the vaccination stuff's been taken. I'm the guy sitting in the corner wondering, how do I make a quip about being half vaccinated?
But you're full vaccinated now.
That's true. It's Wednesday, so I'm fully vaccinated.
I got to update my statistics. So what does that mean?
I've actually been able to measure the progress of the rollout by how active my growler keeps just chirping at me over the course of a day. Like,
is there a tag that you can add this whether or not you're vaccinated or half vaccinated?
People have been adding vaccinated to their names.
Their profiles.
Let me just say, for those of you who have, I don't know, who aren't acquainted with the apps, as we like to say, I opened Grindr just because I was bored while I was waiting for Dan to get his vaccine. We were in, uncharted territory because we had to go pretty far to get Dan his vaccine. And my phone, the eruption of like a new person after people have been kind of, landlocked in their areas for so long.
Oh my God.
The excitement.
They're here.
Yes. Well, and also, I mean, Trevor is quite the boutique item on something like Grindr. And so, oh my God. And he's here and he's 75 feet away. Oh my God. It was.
The McRib is back.
Well, welcome to the show, everybody. If you want Trevor or Don's Grindr profiles, we'll put that on the website.
That's right.
At the end of the episode. We're here. We're back.
Yay.
And better than ever, maybe, possibly. We'll let us know in a poll at the end of this episode. How we are in your eyes.
We're going to be trying something today we've never tried before.
Never been done before, but I'm quite excited.
Yes.
I think this is going to be.
It's been a long time coming.
Yes. So before we get to that, we have a couple. We've got some good stuff going on. We're gonna build up your spirits a little bit.
So. The pop culture doesn't get me. There's plenty of things to get music in this podcast. Not pop culture.
You're not special.
But today we were talking about Yumi Nu, who is the first plus size Asian model for Sports Illustrated.
Yay!
I had to read this twice because I couldn't believe it.
Yes.
I was like, wait, what?
So for this year's swimsuit issue, they have plus size singer, songwriter, model, triple threat Yumi Nu on the cover, which is great. And actually, this article made me kind of realize Sports Illustrated is actually fairly progressive in their, swimsuit photos, and also they do the body issue every year now, which I think started in maybe 2016 or 2018, which highlights different athlete bodies in the nude, which I always kind of find out about because the Chubs, Chasers, and Bears start posting about it on social media. But it's just a delight. Yuminu is beautiful. It's
picture
a great...
they link to is stunning.
Yes.
My God, she is gorgeous.
Which, I mean, the crazy thing to me is like the Sports Illustrated, and maybe this is just a holdover from, when I was growing up, but it was like, it was the thing that like, teenage boys sort of like ogled over before they actually got to real porn.
It was like the training wheels for Playboy.
The swimsuit issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the swimsuit issue was I don't know, like I just remember reading so many Foxtrot comic strips where like that was the punchline, was like the sexy girls in Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. And like it just meant straight male fantasy. And
which was the entry point though? Was it the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, or was it the Victoria's Secret catalog?
Both. I would say both.
Yeah, but see, I don't think a straight 15-year-old guy is going to get caught with the Victoria's Secret catalog.
Yeah, it's going to be the Sears catalog.
Yeah, exactly. and then still his mother's going to say, "Why are you shopping online in a Sears catalog?"
Mm-hmm. We wonder why so many straight guys have a fetish for flannel.
Yeah.
But this was just, I guess like Trevor, like I didn't realize that this is not. I mean, this is something they've been building up to for a little while now. I had no idea that Sports Illustrated, much like Teen Vogue, has been sort of quietly pushing forward the envelope without anybody necessarily noticing. And so it's cool to like shine a light on them and say, hey, like, good job, Sports Illustrated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a quote from her that I wanted to share.
And Yumi, by the way, in case that wasn't clear.
For Asian women, there's a lot of shame in flaunting your body and feeling sexy. And I think for me as a plus size model, we've had to evolve and battle this like inner voice that hasn't evolved. I'm plus size and Asian. That's why I'm like, this is important, she continued. I wanted to do as much as I can to show other people that we don't have to be dainty and little. I can say, I know in myself that I'm beautiful.
That's great.
And to just add on to that, she says, the division and racism in our world has gotten so bad. We've grown so far from love and connection. I want to create a space for people to feel heard and safe. That's my purpose on this earth.
So go Yumi.
Yes.
Is awesome.
Yay, Yumi New. She also, I think, is going to be launching a plus size clothing line called Blue Key.
Yeah.
Which is going to offer sustainably sourced and ethically made apparel in larger sizes. Which, yay, because I feel like so much plus size and big and tall fashion is very unsustainable and very unethically sourced. So yay for that, because that is a much needed feature in larger clothing.
It's sort of a 1-2 punch of good news.
Yes.
We're gonna knock you out by the end of this episode.
But meanwhile,
it's Fat Watch 2021.
Fat Watch
always.
All fat all the time.
Yes. All the news that's fat to print.
Wow. Wow.
Yep, he's mine, ladies and gentlemen.
So this is a piece from Refinery 29, one of my favorite places for, they publish a lot of lovely fat things. And they have a series called The Single Files, where it's people writing about dating in various forms. And this is a piece from Danny Janae called I'm Fat and That Makes Using Dating Apps Difficult. And it's an essay, and she talks about being a fat black queer woman, on the apps, and kind of the types
like
of women
the
that
standard.
The beauty standard for lesbians, and about kind of the lack of representation of black women, brown women, and also just fat women, which when we were talking about, I can't remember exactly which episode it was, but I shared the article talking about Ursula's, or the attempt for Ursula's, and
this is like Barrett. This is Barrett.
Female bears.
Yes,
Yeah.
female
Looking
bears.
For terminology, they reached for Ursula since she's Ursa, and the body type is well known.
But how there isn't real. I thought it was interesting because I feel like within the Chub Chaser community, the bear community, we're like, oh, I think we have a lot of benefit in that there isn't proxies to necessarily in the lesbian community.
Yeah, I think it's a story that you hear if you listen to people of color talk about this, that there is this sort of ubiquitous, unfair standard of beauty, which is the thin white person. Mm-hmm. And this applies pretty much across the board, at least in American culture. And the idea that that is somehow the standard of beauty, and that people, that not only should you seek that out in a partner, but that you should want to be that yourself, mm-hmm. which is something that in a related, not even for this podcast, but talking to somebody for a project for the Boston Gay Men's Chorus, was telling me about his experience with racism. And that was one of the key takeaways that he said, was like, from the time that I was a kid, I've been taught that I should want to be white, mm-hmm. and that was the standard to try and achieve, which is very wrong and worth changing the perception of that, because it's not true.
Was there a sense in the article about there being, like, in the gay community, the gay male community, we have a proliferation of categories you can, and tick boxes you can check and mark, for better or for worse. Is there that sort of proliferation in the lesbian community?
She doesn't really, I mean, she talks about categories, but doesn't really break it down as much. I know, I don't know from my own personal knowledge, that there are not nearly as many categories as gay men have created.
Well, I don't think any group can say they have as many subcategories as we've made.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, because, I mean, for better or for worse, the thing we get slammed for in the gay male community is that it's all about appearance and it's all about looks. And so, we created a whole bunch of categories that are based on looks. we can properly shop.
And also, we're one of the very few communities that is, I mean, we always harp on diversity, but literally every race, creed, and religion can have a gay man come from it. So we have every single group present under our umbrella.
It is the Cheesecake Factory menu of people.
Of sexuality.
And yet, very, very curiously, I just heard from someone on Twitter about how come, I can't remember the dating app it was, but like you could mark bear, but you couldn't mark chub. And that in the United States, at least, those are very distinct. Those are rather distinct in terms of culture and look. In Europe, it's a little more mushed together. Everybody, all fat men are bears.
Right.
So, but that was interesting. And I get that. I find a lot of chubs who are like, I'm not a bear, I'm a chub. And it's hard walking into a bear room when you're not a bear.
These lines are so arbitrary. You know, like, to this day, I still have no idea if I'm a bear or a chub. It depends who you ask. You know?
Done. Yes.
I just remember it was how exciting it was when the mainstream porn websites finally separated bear and added chub to their list of search categories. I was like, they listened.
It's like when the pretzel mix people started selling just the bags of rye chips. Last.
Oh yeah. That was a glorious day.
See,
there's
and that's
dozens of us.
That's all anybody is asking for. Just their own separate little bag of rye chips.
Isn't that really all we need in life?
That's all we need.
It's funny though. I'm thinking about what Michael said about, as far as like being told that you should be white, right? Like, and all that sort of thing. And I was thinking, like, the term too gay, too Jewish, too black. You know, like these are things thrown around in every single of those subgroups, right? When you're told you're too white, like, I think that's a joke, right? Like, that doesn't actually mean anything. Whereas to each of those subgroups, being told you're too gay, you know what that means, right?
I don't know. I almost think I can, like, the instance of too white being like someone, a person of color being told they're too white.
Yeah, it has a very different resonance depending on your particular
you mean not
race.
saying it to a white person, saying it to somebody who's like mixed race.
It depends. Because I would say in the case if you're telling a white person that, it's what Michael said. If you're telling a person of color, I think it's a completely different.
I think if you're telling a person of color they're too white, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
And it's going to mean different things coming from a white person and a person of their own race and the person of another race entirely.
That's thorny.
Can you imagine a white person saying to a person of color, "You're too white"?
Oh God.
Let's
there would be a conversation. But this conversation we're having right now does lead in very nicely to our broader topic.
Dun, dun, dun. It does indeed.
Yes. So this is something we've alluded to several times, that we wanted to do an episode on racism in the Chub Chaser community, but more importantly, that we wanted to do it right, and not, as Dan said an episode or two ago, like not want to just be 3.5 white guys sitting here talking about racism. And yet people have still asked us to do this episode. I think it's important to do. And people have written in many times over the last, 6 to 8 months. And this is what we came up with.
So we put out the call to, at first, just people we knew, and then people who knew people we knew. And we were just trying to get a sense of what do people who are not white think about this conversation? Because as Michael said, it's sort of silly for us as 3.5 white guys to talk about the evils of racism. It's sort of, we appreciate that people want to hear our opinions, but come on, guys, we're not qualified.
One of us can talk authentically about
I am
that.
50% qualified to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
yeah.
What about, and the Black experience is completely different from other experiences from anyway, you guys get it. So, what we wanted to do was have people in their own voice contribute to this conversation. But we didn't also want to have a series of interviews, because on a podcast format, having a panel discussion can turn into just a Donnybrook. So we had people record answers to some specific questions. And so today we're going to share with you the responses and the questions, and you'll hear us talk about it.
Yeah. And it was, like Dan said, really important to actually get people's voices. And so I think we'll start with a question, and just as we go through, play a clip that you can hear their own stories and their own experiences that we can then all absorb and think about and take forward. And hopefully that starts a discussion that maybe some people weren't knowing they needed to have or planning on having. So the first question we reached out to for people to answer was, in dating a chub or a chaser, has a guy ever had preconceived ideas about you based on your race? What happened and how did you deal with it?
Hello, my name is Dexter Mayfield, also known as Dex Rated on the social medias. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I identify as a Black cisgendered queer male. There has been one or two instances where I did have to check someone about a few things when it came in regards to preconceived ideas or notions or prejudice in that manner. It was actually in Australia. There was this one guy who definitely fetishized Black men, and I learned that actually after a friend who was also Black and visiting interact with him as well. And he pretty much, the guy that I had a previous moment with, actually didn't acknowledge me as if we never met or anything like that. So it was definitely interesting, especially because my friend was leaner, taller. And so I guess it became a hierarchy of body size as opposed to my race. But I definitely felt that sense of being a fetish just in general, just because of my skin tone. And in that moment, I actually ignored it, and because it just wasn't worth my time. And even my friend, without me even mentioning that at all, basically made the decision that that guy was not the best to deal with.
Clearly, there is a place and a time where this person is perfectly okay with Dexter. Like there is a setting and a situation where that is great for him, and then to completely separate that out in like a more public setting is almost intentionally cruel, or like to feel like you can just like run around and be like, no, actually, I'm just going to treat this person this way. Like there's got to be consequences to shit like that. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we can get the name of the guy from Dexter.
I hate to say it, but it would just take too much time and energy to mete out the punishment to everyone who does this.
Yeah.
Like this is not, unfortunately, having, just read through some of the responses that we're seeing here, none of the responses we're getting here are going to be a surprise to any of the people of color listening to this. Mm-hmm. These are not rare events. So,
but also I think the attitudes of the people experiencing these things are going to vary immensely. So for instance, Robert.
Hey, my name is Robert, and I'm from LA, and I'm Chinese, so I identify as Asian. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna name who, but one of my ex actually, when he first met me, he kept mentioning I look like Jackie Chan, which I don't. And but it's really about perceived motion. It seems like all the Chinese people look the same. So in a way, it is a little bit insulting. But at the same time, I think at least from the intention I read, I mean, it's obviously he's interested. So he was more about a misunderstanding or trying to get more information, just curiosity. So that's why I more kind of instead of being offended, I mean, like I give him more education, trying to get to know who I am, right? In many ways, obviously a part of thing about my culture, but actually who I am.
Yeah, and Robert's response for all of the questions was very much sort of like, if people will just know me for me, I'm happy. If they don't like me because I'm Asian or whatever, that's too bad. But like, just get to know me for me. We should all get to know each other for each other.
Here's the thing, though. We use psychologically speaking, there's a shorthand that we just apply to everyone. Like, what do you look like? What are my expectations based on people like you? What are my experiences based on people like you? Apply, right? And with Asian American representation having been as thin as it's been for the past 40 years, like it really isn't until the last 5 years where we actually have Asian people showing up in mainstream popular culture in more than one or two. When I was growing up, I was always referring to the Asian of the Week in Hollywood, where you had one male Asian actor and James Hong working at any given time. Right. And then when that Asian actor sort of just the flavor wore off them or people stopped paying attention, a new Asian guy would wear up and he would be the Asian guy for the next 5 to 10 years. And it's true of women too. Although it was easier for Asian American women to find any sort of work. So the whole Jackie Chan comparison thing, for Asian people, that's really not a rarity because white people who would fetishize Asian people only knew 2 or 3 Asian people from popular culture. Yeah. So those were the 3 points of comparison that you'd get over and over and over. And they'd think they were complimenting the Asian guy because who wouldn't want to look like Jackie Chan? He's handsome. He's an action star. He's awesome. Yeah, but you're the 6th person I've gone on a date with to tell me that this year.
Yeah, and as Robert points out, he doesn't look like Jackie Chan. And
no, not even a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, let's also just the very basic etiquette of going onto a date and telling the person you're on a date with who they look like. That feels uncomfortable to me.
Yeah.
Like just as an etiquette thing, like just on a base level, like don't do that. That's nobody's looking to hear that. There's like, is that your way of relating to an Asian person? Is that the way you have to open the conversation?
Well, because what it comes down to is whatever your relationship to the person you're comparing them to, the other person doesn't know what it is you like about that person. All they get is what they think about that person. Yeah. So if they have no relationship to Jackie Chan other than, he's Asian, they're like, oh, great. You think I'm Asian. Good for you. So what, and that's on a good day. Like there's a whole other tunnel you could go down too. What's interesting to me about Robert's response is he's so much more concerned with, as Don said, there aren't a lot of markers that white people have been exposed to in the media. And this is not as an excuse, but Robert sees that as an opportunity to educate rather than an opportunity to set someone on blast.
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful, just because we could all do with a little more education. And I think it may be a way that he navigates this better because he's not stewing in something, but I don't know. I can't, obviously I'm not speaking for everybody because I don't experience this.
I think it's great that he wants to educate and like take the opportunity to educate. But we're seeing more and more the understandable and deserved fatigue of people of color having to do this work. And I think that's one of my goals with the podcast and really even just fat activism is I think allyship is important so that, allies can do some of this work and also just people can educate themselves.
Right.
Because
like, imagine that you're going through life and every conversation you have to have has to start with a list of things that you have to do before you can even get to the substance of the conversation. You have you have homework that you can either choose to do, or the conversation can go poorly if you don't. And it's not something that you should have to. Like, that is exhausting.
Imagine if every other person you ran into was a flat earther and wanted to talk about it. And in order to have the conversation with each and every one of them, you would have to explain the basics of astrophysics. And like, it'd be really tiring if you had to do it 4 or 5 times a day. So here's another thing. I guarantee you Robert has had this conversation too, where someone tells them, wow, I've never been with an Asian guy before. That's one of those preconceptions of like, well, so you're being with me because I'm Asian. There is no good way to continue that statement, so just don't make it in the first place.
Well, it begs the question, what's so different?
Yeah, like, why?
What is your expectation?
Yeah.
Like,
also, like, who are you expecting congratulations? Like, is this like,
wow, you're so woke. Now blow me. It's like,
like, what possible response could somebody have to that? Like, that would be helpful. Like, it's just useless. It's a useless statement and sentiment.
Anyway, felt it should be addressed. Who else do we have?
We have Sean.
Hello, my name is Sean J. Lawrence. I am originally from New York City, the South Bronx, and now I live in Los Angeles, California, and I've been out here for 13 years. I identify as a beautiful, bodacious, black chocolate chub. It's interesting because when people see me, they automatically assume that I'm this dominant, aggressive, hip hop loving top. And that's, not me. Definitely I'm an outgoing person. I, love to get to know people. I love house music. It brings peace and happiness to my soul and a smile on my face. I definitely identify as being a bottom. People assume that I'm going to be this fetish, this big black fetish that's gonna, take care of them. I was like, no, I want to be taking care of myself. I tell people, get to know me as a person. I'm gonna try and get to know you, and we're gonna, figure it out and meet in the middle and see what happens. Get rid of all these crazy ideas that you have.
Yeah, and we've heard the story before. This was written to us specifically to address this kind of issue, and this was where we got caught with, like, this is clearly very important to talk about. How do we talk about this? And I think that's why it's important.
Well,
to
Michael,
put this in, like,
as a white person,
it's. I have nothing but empathy for this person. What do you do about that? Like, how do you just get caught in this box? This, again, one of the interviews we did for the chorus, and I just pull on this because these were like in-depth interviews with a lot of the same subjects. And he was talking about the box that he lived in for a long time because he couldn't express his gayness in the Black community, and he couldn't express this racial charge he was dealing with in his gay community. And like, just the idea of like living in this space by yourself without any way to fight back.
I do feel like it's one of the reasons why you do see a lot of racial segregation in the gay community, is because if your two major intersections of, is gay and Black, and gay people don't understand blackness, and Black people don't understand gayness, you're going to find that those people that do share that overlap may cluster together in order to talk about all the rest of the people, the bullshit that they have to go through because of them.
Yeah, that's I never thought of that, Don. That's good.
And then, I mean, we have the other, compounded factor here of within the Chub Chaser community. This is why I think it's so important to talk about intersectionality, because you have all of these different parts of an identity that are different ways people are oppressing you. And then you go into each of these communities hoping to kind of find a space to be. And then, okay, well, no, I can't. I'm too much of this for this,
Too fat
this
for
other
the
part
gays,
of my identity.
Too Black for the fat people.
Yeah.
It's
like, the goal would be for vaguely open-minded person to be able to just take people as they are and to just experience somebody on their terms and let them inform what you think about them. And it's a great idea. I don't think most people do that. And so my hope for this moment, for this show, for the continuing forward, because we're going to keep doing things like this, is to just remind people that is actually work you need to actively do. You can't just depend on the person you're interacting with, like Sean, for instance, to tell you or to educate you to like, okay, no, don't walk in this door with all of your preconceived notions. Just meet me as I am. He shouldn't have to remind you to do that. So let us be that annoying reminder so that you can actually, take that into your life if that's something that if you're on the other side of this fence.
So the next big question we have, this has been a hot topic in gay communities forever, as far as I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is not unique to the Chub Chaser community either, but the question is, are you attracted to people of one race more than another? If so, have you been criticized for this?
Yeah. We'll let Armando start us off here.
Hello, my name is Armando. I live in San Francisco, California. I'm Latino, I'm gay, and I'm chaser. Okay. As I was saying, I lived most of my life in Mexico. That's where I grew up. And one of the things that, it's drilled in your mind from an early age is the beauty standards, the person that you like has to be skinny, has to be white. If they have blue eyes, that's perfect, blonde or whatever. And so when I came out of the closet, that's what I was looking for, just like I'm a chaser, so I was like, oh, I would give priority to a white chub, let's say, over the rest of the people that was available for me to date. And when I started college, I started hanging out with people that made me realize of these ideas and the colorism that I had in my mindset and how that was affecting my personal relationships. So it's not that I was criticized by it. It's more I kind of realized, so you would never date someone that looks like you, or why would you not? I don't know. I was just not registering it until I grew older, I guess.
Yeah, I think Armando's experience is that's not unique. I gotcha, Armando. There's a lot of people that feel that way, or at least go through phases of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think when you first start acting on your sexuality, when you're first going out the door, I can't fault anyone for going after the sexual fantasy that they've built up in their head over the, whatever 10 years of life it took for them to reach sort of sexual agency, right? But the starting point isn't where you live. As you live and grow and go outside the box, if you are still insisting that the only sexual partner for you is the very first one that you imagined, I mean, it's a show of sexual immaturity. And two, I mean, what do you guys think? Is it outrightly racist to say I only date one race? I only find one race attractive?
Well, what I found really interesting about Armando's response is how he acknowledges that his colorism, because he uses the word colorism a lot, and in Mexico that has a lot more sense because there's that they have a long history of that in the law and in the culture. And what I found so interesting is he began to realize that this idea of my ideal mate as being the blonde white chub. And first of all, you have to get to chub just because, the thin fat thing. But that he began to realize that this was affecting him and how he looked at himself because he ain't that white. And how he was, how he was undervaluing himself. And I get this from other parts of the interview with him, that he was looking at how, if I'm not the ideal, what does that say about my relationship to myself? Yeah.
One thing that I've always wondered about this phenomenon, because I've heard a lot of guys, almost everyone I've talked to has mentioned this, that sort of the idea that the sort of the white chub is not this is true, but just colloquially the gold standard in the Chub Chaser world. And that anyone who's not that has to kind of fight against that current unfairly. And one thing I've always wondered is that certainly in America and in many countries, like the white person, the white man typically is the one who has most of the power in that society. And I'm curious if that subconsciously or socially plays a role in wanting to do things to or with the person in charge, even if it's just a perception thing.
I mean, I think part of that is just like, from all of the answers to this question, especially one of the upcoming ones, I'll expand on this later, but I think a lot of it is just because, everything in America has been so white up until more recently. I mean, every media is still, predominantly white, but I think, growing up, we were talking about Sports Illustrated, for the straight male fantasy, there has been a very manufactured image of what is beautiful. And when that is so ingrained into society in so many different ways, that kind of corrupts the soil and affects how people develop their taste.
Especially when you're putting up this billboard of white male perfection, and that's not actually what white males look like. It's sort of ridiculous that nobody passes that beauty standard.
Yeah.
Even within a group of white male chubs, like they're going to look wildly different even within their own, and guys who don't fit a really specific standard in that white male chub group, they'll get filtered out by this fake ideal.
And there's also something that plays into a previous answer about how, who do you take home to your parents? And there's
that's
a story
what I was about to lead into too.
Yeah, I have direct. My father was born in Italy along with all his brothers and sisters, and it was a real coup when he brought home a blonde white woman of German descent as his girlfriend, later to be my mother, and that was part of the American dream for my family at one time. I don't think it is now.
Yeah.
But there was a sense of that, oh, she's so pretty, she's so blonde, she has blue eyes. Oh my God. And I mean, my dad is Italian, and I mean, there's a whole construction of whiteness where, there was a time when the Italians weren't white, and there was a time when the Irish weren't white. Whiteness is constructed, and you have to be, it's a whole long history lesson. But so seeing my mother that way, that was the American dream for an Italian immigrant.
I had an ex who, when he, from the deep, deep South, came out, in his early 20s and, to his very religious Bible Belt Southern family. And the response was basically, well, we just want you to be happy. We're okay that you're gay. Just don't date somebody black.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that being gay was okay before dating a black person. Like that blew my mind actually when he told me that. I was like, are you really? But also, that is,
people have this,
people think that,
which also leads into these evolutions of sexual maturity, sexual racial maturity, where so first off, there are the people that, can't imagine sleeping with someone of, outside their race or outside the race that they're attracted to. And then there are the people that become so woke that they'll fuck someone outside their race, but dating them? No.
Right.
And I find that's much more common of what I run into in California is, I'll fuck anyone, but I'm not going to date, a Latino person or an Asian person. Because I would just be so far outside my experience. I'll never fit in with my family. And all wait, let's talk that through for a moment.
Well, and a lot of people of color discuss that as well, of a Chinese American bringing home a white guy to their Asian parents.
Sure.
Or someone African American who brings home a white guy to date to their parents are like, what is this about?
So before we move on to the next question, let's hear from Sean and Corin, which I think we'll just play them together.
I definitely like guys from all walks of life, races, and white, black, Spanish, Asian, Latin. I definitely have been to know to like white guys a little bit more, but that doesn't mean that I don't like people from other races. People definitely have criticized me for that, and sometimes people assume that because they have seen me talk to a lot of white guys, that's the only thing that I like. And I was like, no, let's get to know me as a person, and there's definitely some other things that I do like, and we can figure it out together. But it definitely sometimes does put you in a certain aspect, a certain light with people.
My name is Corin. I'm black, and I'm in the not so great state of Texas, and I am a chaser. I've had a guy I was really into constantly fixate on my blackness whenever describing my appearance. Like, all of his compliments started with, "Oh, you're so cute," black insert body part, etc. At that point, I just left them on red and ghosted them, because someone who thinks like that probably has a lot of other racist notions in their head. But it's very depressing how this sort of behavior limits potential connections.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm more in line with Corin's response, where it's specific physical features are things I find attractive. Like, so for me, it's a strong jawline, right? A strong jawline, that is the definition of handsome to me. But that exists in most races, right? So I guess I'm lucky that my default tends to make it easier for me to find people of any group attractive.
That is my question. That this is a sticky subject.
Oh yeah,
and this is a tricky one to talk about, but I think we should. Which is there? Obviously, there is a difference, but I want to hone in on what the differences are, if we can identify them, between racism, which would be somebody saying, "I won't date a black person," or an Asian person, or whatever, like picking a race and saying, "I won't," or that I will exclusively do this other race, which typically is white, but not always. There's also the people who are like, "I only fuck black guys," which is a whole other kind of racism.
Yeah.
Versus having any other kind of declared preference. Like, for instance, I'm a chaser, so I exclusively date and am interested in fat guys. Where, given that racism has a completely other set of like social significances, at what point, for instance, can somebody say that I am sizeist against skinny people because I only date chubs?
Right.
Which would be ridiculous.
That you're misogynist because you never date women by policy.
Sure. Yeah, because I identify as gay. Yeah. That's not to say that like choosing to only, be being attracted to white guys is somehow the same as being a chaser. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, what are those differences? Are we able to identify them? How does that, what is that?
I've spent a lot of time thinking about that, and I'm still going around in my head about it. Go ahead. But yeah.
I think the big thing that why people are so hurt and pained by this is because in so many instances of this exclusivity, people feel dehumanized. And I think often there are people who are not intentionally doing so, but are dehumanizing the individual, that they are saying, "I only do X," or "I won't do X because it is just this." Like,
very well put.
It is like,
yeah.
Like when you say, "I'm not going to date Asian guys," like, what does that mean? You're not going to date guys of a specific skin shade? You don't like guys from Asia, or does that include Asian Americans? Like, when you really start boring down into what it is they're saying, it's hard to not just point out that that's really freaking racist. When you're excluding a group because of one adjective.
And when it becomes the thing of, no fats, no femmes, no Asians, it is hard for it not to, I mean, I don't even know. It is just so.
I feel like that's one of the consequences of having so much choice, like especially now when you have access to the internet and all of the people who inhabit the internet. And it now, in the same way that you have entire groups of people that can get together because they think that, Trump's presidency was stolen from him, and they find a corner of the internet to gather together. You can also find a corner of the internet where you can, you can pick. You can literally just ignore everybody that you're not by default interested in. I think that just makes it very easy to continue to do that. Not that that's the only reason it exists, but
also the more often you say something like that, the more often you affirm it to yourself and those around you, right? It's like, I don't find Asian guys attractive. Well, the more often you say that, the less likely it is you're going to be able to find an Asian person attractive. And you're drilling that into the person next to you.
That. Exactly. That's what I was going to say. You are disseminating that idea, this fictionalized idea that that's somehow true.
And just the way that the way the internet has become, people treat Grindr like Grubhub. And it is not.
Yeah.
I mean, while it has the convenience factor that I may have a delicious meal in my room within 30 minutes, like Michael said, there's just so much choice that I think people don't realize.
It's easy to stop thinking of them as people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're a product on the other side that you're trying to acquire.
And I think that's just, that happened, I think is what has happened with social media, because it is just, people aren't thinking of each other as people.
Yes. I think there's also a context here that we're stepping over. And that is, or I should say, over a series of overlapping contexts. For example, it is one thing for a white guy to say, I don't date black guys. It is quite another thing for a black guy to say, I don't date white guys. Mm-hmm. It is one thing for a Christian guy to say, I don't date Jews. It is another thing for a Jewish guy to say, I don't date non-Jewish women because I would never take her home to my mother and we would never have children together because I want my children to be Jewish. So there's a whole bunch of overlapping contexts that are not equivalent. And I think that's the problem that a lot of us have is it's very hard to, because one of the ways that we think about this is through analogy. So like I say, well, I'm not black, but I'm gay. Well, the problem is the gay lens is not equivalent to the black lens. And so it doesn't function.
Right.
And, well, I'm not Jewish, but I'm gay. So, but they don't function equivalently. And so we get tied up in a lot of, but why and how come? And there's so much history and there's so much, as I say, these filters are so very, very different. And of course, what I'm pointing to is intersectionality, but it's highly complex and it's just something we're working through.
Mm-hmm. So as you guys might have noticed, this is definitely a two-parter plus, and we'll continue on in a part 2 this week. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time.